If you're used to these short videos that I make, kind of making notes on different aspects of Mitchie's opening concepts or other topics, um, this video is going to deviate in two ways. First of all, it's much longer. I just can't shorten it down. I try to do these videos 15 minutes or less for each video, and sometimes go slightly over, but in this one, I fear I'm going to go significantly over. And I can't. I've looked at the ways. Do I do it in installments? But it needs to be kind of a discrete whole one video, I think. So for that reason, it's going to be a longer video. You can stop and pause. I do this. I do these videos, as you know, really have to make notes for myself, and then if they're of any help to people in Wicklow Backgammon Club or elsewhere, um, people are welcome to them. But really, it's for my own sake, and for my own sake, I just need to get my head around this particular concept. And the other way in which this video is going to deviate from usual, is that normally I'm looking at Mitchie's book or another, expert like Dirk Sheeman or someone like that, and kind of taking notes from their books. In this one, this is a concept I find it very hard to research or get any sort of information about this, what I call awkward sixes. In Proverb 17, Mitchie makes the point that sixes can be an absolute wonder roll or a complete pain. And that's what got me talking about this, because I do find sometimes rolling the number six on a dice can cause you huge problems, and they can be a very awkward number. So I'm afraid this video isn't notes from one of the world's greatest backgammon experts. It's really just me and what I can put together. And let me just explain, first of all, what I mean by awkward sixes. So this was a position I was playing in Wicklow Backgammon Club last night, and the first game I encountered this position. I just took a photograph of it and kind of set it up in XG. So I have a checker on the bar. I've rolled a 4 and a 6. The idea, very often it's called sixes from the bar, where you've rolled something that gets you in and then have the 6 to play. And this situation, so we have to come in with the 4. What do you do with the 6? And there's various different possibilities. And that's what I mean by an awkward 6. There's nothing that's particularly attractive or obvious here. It's an awkward play. It's not a good news for us. And we're trying to, I suppose, find the least bad option as much as anything else. There were, as I said, there's very little information out there. I've researched this. There's only 2 commentators I could find who've done anything about this. And those 2 commentators are Bill Roberti and Bill Roberti in a different format. So the first of these is an article in the Gammon Press, which, as far as I know, is Bill Roberti blogging. And he talked about playing a random 6 from the bar, and he gave 4 rules that you can apply when you do this. And they are to minimize shots and blots, to stay out of the danger zone, which is really our opponent's zone between their 9 point and their 4 point, to keep our back checkers connected, and to see how our opponent's doublets play, because sometimes doublets can be especially damaging for us. And you give those rules, and you don't need to don't be worried about these rules for now, because I'm going to summarize all the rules shortly. But that was the first article I found from Bill Roberti, where he gave 4 points. I then went into Bill Roberti's brilliant book, How to Play the Opening in Backgammon. Book 3, there's a section on playing a random 6 from the bar. And he gave us up with 4 different rules. And this is where it kind of becomes confusing. So in the last position, we'd kind of 4 rules. Now he's got 4 new ones. Some of them are quite situational. And again, I'm not going to go into them in depth here, because I'm going to cover them over the course of this presentation. But 4 rules for, if you can hit a pointer blot and make a good point, do it. If you can play, there's specific positions. And I said I'm going to come back to them. But suddenly then I was faced with, well, now there's 8 different rules, 2 sets of 4 from the same person, kind of left me confused. So I've been kind of working at this and playing with this as XG, and you'll be glad to hear I've come up with my own little process. 8 rules. The fact there's 8 bullet points here, nothing to do with what Bill Roberti said. They're on my own little plays. And again, I won't read them all out here, because I'm going to go through them point by point in a second. I kind of came up with a sort of a process for awkward 6s. And then I also came up a number of specific positions, specific situations where we would play them differently, and how we'd play them. And again, rather than read them all out here, I'm just going to go them example, over the course of the next little while. So here's my process. And I said, I don't claim to be an expert. I'm an intermediate player at best who's learning the game and making these notes. But based on the advice from Bill Roberti, and in one case from Dirk Sheeman, and based on me fiddling around with XG and just trying different things, here's what I've come up with awkward sixes. And my proposal is that I'm going to get this video out there because it's taken a couple of weeks of my life kind of just looking at this. And then I'm going to leave it, and maybe in a year's time I might come back and say, a lot of this just I need to upgrade. So I think I still have more to learn. But here's my process for awkward sixes. And the first thing is this. Take your time. Run through all plays carefully. Bill Roberti actually says in his book, he kind of says, the great thing with opening sixes is he calls it, he says, it's actually one of the easier categories of problems because half your roll is forced. Yes, one of your rolls, if you roll a 6-5 and you come in from the bar, you're likely not to be able to play the 6 from the bar. So you play the 5 from the bar and now you have to decide the 6. So he says this is much easier because you've only one really dice roll to worry about. I just managed often to choose the wrong use of the 6. So try it all the plays and just take your time with this. It is difficult, I think, and just kind of see what works. The second thing is check if there's a safe play, because sometimes there's a play that just avoids. Sometimes it's not awkward because it's a safe, obvious play. So here's the example where we come in. Here's, we're as usual, we're white. We're bearing into the bottom right. And we've rolled a 6 and a 5, and we have that checker on the bar. So most of these examples, I think all these examples, I am playing a 6 from the bar. So the 5 is forced. We have to come in from the bar with the 5. What do we do with the 6? And there's kind of options here. We can run a whole range of things. But if you look, I've just moved from the 9 point to the 3 point here with the 6. I've tied it. I had a blot on my 9 point by moving it forward to the 3, which I did appreciate. I did rather quickly. I hope you were able to see that. I've played safely there. I have put a checker in behind black's anchor, which is usually not very good, but I've tidied up a blot, and this is the safest move. And for this reason, bar 20 and 9 to 3 is the correct move. But just be careful, because what I did find playing with XG does not like it. It's rare that if we take a checker and bury it in behind our opponent's anchor, and particularly if we bear deeper. In that last example, we were tidying up a blot on the 9 point, so there's a little bit of an attraction to it. Generally, if we were to play a checker off our 8 point, often it can strip the 8 point. It's definitely putting a checker onto our 2 point, which now buries a checker very deep, and that's unlikely to be right. Sometimes it's not far wrong, but XG does not like us taking a checker and burying it deep. And let me give you an example here. So we rolled a 6 and a 5. As usual, the 5 is forced and we have to come in like that. What could we do with the 6? And we could play 8 to 2, and that's a safer option. That checker is kind of put in behind our opponent's anchor there. We're not leaving black a lot of shots. If they do hit us, they might leave a blot in their home board and we can hit them back. That surely is quite nice. But no, if you look at it, it's down the bottom there, the fourth option there, 8 to 2, is a blunder. It's a blunder because XG does not like us sticking a checker behind our opponent's anchor. It's effectively we're trying to play the rest of the game with 14 checkers rather than 15. It's like playing a rugby match with 14 men rather than 15 men. You're just going to be that weaker. So they don't like it. So instead, what XG prefers is that rather than coming in playing 8 to 2, we actually play 24 to 18. And I look at that and I think, God, we're leaving 3 blots, lots of shots up the top there. But XG says we are better off playing a match with 15 people, even if we're down in the game, rather than playing with 14 people. And so he actually prefers that messy position at the top rather than this position here where we stuck a checker in behind and it's out of the game. Now, I have 2 ways that 6s from the bar need not be awkward. And the first of them is this. If we can hit with the 6, we should hit. And this is a lovely bit of a rule I find, because I've been unable to find any possible option where this is wrong. So if you can hit with the 6, hit with the 6. So here's an example here. We've come in, where we're on the bar, we've rolled a 6 and a 5, we come in with the 5. We can use the 6 up the top there to play our rearmost checker forward and hit the black blot, and that is the correct move. Anything else is a blunder. It's lovely. If you can hit with a 6, just do it. It's absolutely your surefire to be right. Here's another example where we can come in with the 5, and if we play that checker that came in another 6 pips forward, look, there's a black blot there on black's 11 point, we can hit. And again, anything else is a blunder. So just that's the first easy one. And here's even a position here. Surely this can't be right. We come in with the 5 as usual. Look down the bottom now. We can play from 11 to 5 and hit. Do we want to kind of come in like that? Surely we're leaving blots, wasted. We could be hit back and be very far down in the race. Absolutely. Anything else is a blunder. So even if it kind of looks awkward, I think it's a really good rule of thumb. If you can hit with your 6, do. The second priority, as I said, there's 2 priorities to avoid awkwardness altogether and make your awkward 6s not awkward. If we can make a good point, we should as well. So if you look at this situation here, we've rolled a 6 and a 5. Again, we have to come in with the 5. But look down the bottom, the blot on our 7 point. We can play a 6 down from the 13. We've made a good point, and that's going to be the right thing to do. But that was our position there. Can I just change that slightly? What if we didn't have that position? But instead, we give black a blot on their 11 point, our 14 point. Look at the top left there. We put a black blot there instead. Now, we come in with the 5. We can still make our 7 point. The 6 coming down 13 to 7 makes us our 7 point. We know we've only got 2 checkers back. We're still in the game. You might just take a moment to think, are we better off? We can hit with playing from the checker on black's 5 point, hit them on their 11 point, or we can make our bar point, we can make the 7 point by going 13 to 7. What would you do? Well, just remember the order. Priority 1 is hit. And I put that specifically there because if we can hit, we should hit. The right move is to hit. So when we come in with the 5, we hit black rather than making our bar point. And you're always right. So if you think of it in those that order of priorities, priority 1, hit. Priority 2, if you can't hit, make a blot. And here's another situation where that priority 2 comes into play, where we can come in with the 5. Can we use a 6 to make a good point? Yes, we can. Look up the top right. Our rearmost checker there on the 24 point. We play that forward with a 6. We make a nice anchor on our opponent's bar point. Really strong point to have. We're now in a good defensive position. That's going to be the right option. Anything else is a mistake. And just like the last position I gave you, I'm going to give you another example where we can hit. So instead of doing that, we leave that loose checker on black's 11 point up the top left there. We come in with the 5s this time. Well, we could hit. If we hit, it looks like that. We've left blots everywhere. Is that right to hit this time? Absolutely. So if you think of it in terms of priority 1, if you can hit, do. Priority 2, if you can't, but can make a good point, great. And those situations aren't really awkward. I call these awkward 6s. If you can hit or make a point, it's not awkward at all. But beyond that, the use of our 6 is going to be a bit of a pain. So a few things to think about. Bear in mind shots and blots. How many shots are we leaving our opponent? How many blots are we leaving around the board? Try to minimize them if we can. Bill Roberti says in the Gammon Press article that blots left between our opponent's 9 point and our 4 point are especially vulnerable. I would just note that XG just does not seem to think so. Yes, we should try to minimize that bullet point there. Try to minimize shots and blots. Definitely, the more shots and blots we leave, the more XG isn't going to like the play. But we don't need to obsess with what's in the brackets there, and that's why I put it in the brackets. I'm only putting it in because Bill Roberti mentioned it. It could be a bit of a tiebreaker. So if we've got two options that are pretty much the same, well, yeah, try and avoid leaving blots in what he calls our opponent's zone between their 9 point and their 4 point, because they're the points the opponent's going to want to make, and if they can hit them, it's all the more attractive to them than those points. But here's an example of this where we don't want to leave too many blots. So we come in with again, it's 5, 6. I've tried to use similar numbers, and they are good. Obviously, it's going to be a 6 and another numbers. Sometimes you could call it 6 plus x, and x is just the other number that's with it. We have to come in with the 5. What do we do with the 6? So, well, we could play 24 to 18, but if you look at that, I think you can see very quickly why we wouldn't. Black can hit us with abandon with kind of whole range of very good numbers, 6s and 3s and 1s and 5s, all hit. So we've just left too many blots there, so we won't do that. We could run another checker forward from black's 5 point to its 11 point, but now black hits us with 2s and 3s and 5s and 6s. Again, just an awful lot of very good hitting numbers. So let's put that back. Is there anything else we can do? We can't, the blot in the top left, we can't play that 6 forward because black blocks us. We could come down 13 to 7 is an option, and it leaves a number of shots. We could bury a checker deep, 8 to 2, but we know that burying the checker deep, even though it's safe, it's generally not going to be preferred by XG. So if you look at that position, the best thing to do of all those options, we've kind of gone through, we've tried out all our different options, come in with the 5. If we play the 13 to 7, what does black hit us with? If you count it out, well, down the bottom, it hits us with a 3. On the left-hand side, black hits us with a 3. On our top right there, a 3 or a 1. So we've duplicated 3s very much. Sorry, up the top left, black also hits us with a 6, in fairness. But we've minimized the number of shots that hit us. And for that reason, that's the right move, coming down from 13 to 7. Incredibly, the one that left the 4 blots there isn't disastrous, isn't a mistake. But the right move is to kind of minimize the shots. The second thing, in the first of the Bill Roberti articles, he talks about the importance of keeping our back checkers connected. But later on, this is what he says in the second book. He actually refers to this, and he says that sometimes he says his words are, the reason players commonly err in this sort of position is that it appears they're disconnecting their back checkers and losing the chance to make an anchor. They're worried about that, but it's not a big deal, he says. And he says connectedness in his kind of, and this is what XG seems to support as well. He said connectedness is a bonus, and if you've got 2 equally good plays, well, maybe keeping your checkers connected is better. But we shouldn't get hung up on it. And certainly, as I've gone through this, XG just doesn't put a great value on it. So here's a situation where we come in with a 6 and a 3 this time. Well, the 3 is forced. What do we do with the 6? We could move 24 to 18, but we're giving black a lot of shots there if we do that and achieving nothing. We could come 13 to 7, but black again hits us with a 2 or a 6, and there's a big racing cost to doing that. We could play the 8-2, but as you can imagine, even bigger. If black were to roll a 1, there's an even bigger racing cost, and if black doesn't roll a 1, we've pushed our checker very deep. Or we could come in with the 3 and just go forward another 6. And that's actually the correct outcome, just playing, bar to 16. But look at our back checkers. Our 2 back checkers are now further than 6 apart. And I'd be cautious about doing that. Having read the first Bill Roberti article, I think, well, they're not connected. I shouldn't be doing that. But in fact, don't get too hung up in connectedness, because XG definitely doesn't. And bar to 16 is the right option. And trying to keep our back checkers connected, you look at it, the 49 millipoint error. And finally, in terms of process, the other person I found had a helpful article about this was Dirk Schiemann in his book To Hit or Not to Hit. And he talks about, maybe we do hit, and particularly kind of 8-2. If black has a checker on our 2 point, we can hit with the 8-2. Sometimes that tempo hit can be a good thing. He does say that it has to suit the game plan. And when we did kind of tempo hitting earlier, I've shown this example before, but tempo hitting, as long as it suits our game plan, can be a good thing. So here's a couple of examples. 1, 6 and 4, we could come in with the 4. Anything we do to the 6 is kind of leaving shots, lots of shots for black there, and lots of chances to make a good point on our home board as well. Likewise, if we play 24-18, but if we play 8-2, we might get, it's a tempo hit. We might get hit back, but if we don't, but even if we do, it's black is half of black's roll is going to be coming off the bar, which means they're not going to make a point on the home board. Even if we're hit back, well, it improves their chances of making an anchor. So sometimes tempo hits can be a good bonus. And here's another situation. This is one that Bill Roberti actually gives in the way of tempo hit. Again, we come in with the 4 options. You could run. I'd have thought coming in with 4 and then run further 6 more isn't a bad situation. But I wouldn't be going the 24-18 route, or even the 13-7. There's just too many hits. Black hits us with 3s, 5s, 2s, 4s. It's just too vulnerable. But black, if you look at black's checkers up on the top there, they've made the 9. Sorry, they have a blot in the 9 points. They have a lovely. That's the best. We'll be coming to that as the best builder in terms of making a point in their home board. They've lots of options the next move to make a nice point, maybe even on their 4 point and hit us in their home board. So we want to slow them down. So by playing 8-2, that's a good tempo hit. We've slowed them down. They're not going to be able to make a point in their home board unless they roll doublets. And even if they hit us, well, we've got an extra checker to go back and give us a bit more ammunition at the back to play a back game. And that's why that's the right reason. But it is important that if we are tempo hitting, it's consistent with our game plan. And this is what Dirk Schiemann says. He said, look at this position here. If you look down the bottom, forget our checker on the bar, just look at what we're doing at the bottom. We're very clearly trying to create a prime down the bottom. We're in a priming position. So coming in is the 5 here. If we were to, the right move, we just want to run that forward. Because look, the second move there, the tempo hit, if we were to hit with 8-2, we're suddenly moving, we're taking a priming position and playing a blitzing move. So the move is not consistent with the game plan, which is priming. And for that reason, we just want to run it forward. And even though that looks kind of pretty disastrous and very vulnerable, we just need to keep the faith that we're priming down the bottom. Try and keep going for purity and building our 5 point, rather than kind of hitting on the 2 point, which would be vulnerable. However, if instead of having a priming position, we've just changed that around, and now we've 2 stacks on the bottom, so blitzing is suddenly much more attractive. And this time the right move is to hit. So all I did there was take the blot that we had on the 9 point and the blot that we had on the 5 point, put them back up into the nearest available stack, make us a little bit more stacked, and suddenly hitting is the right move. Now, there are, in Bill Roberti's book, he talks about 4 specific positions that I think are quite helpful that we could talk about. The first of these is this, and you kind of have to read this slowly. There's 4 of these, and I think you'll see this is why I want to have kind of one long video here, because they're so not complex, but there's just a bit of learning to this that we just I want to put them all down in the one video. This one is this. If the race is close, and we can play a checker to the 18 point while we still have a checker back in the 24 point, we should play to the 18 point. So it's probably easier to explain with an example. And very often the example, Bill Roberti says, very often the example there is with the 6-1. So we have to come in with the 1. We could play 8-2. Huge racing cost if we're hit. No particular advantage. And we said the race is close here, so we don't want to give black a chance to the race. We could play 13-7. Not as bad a hit, if an impact on the race if we're hit, but still a significant impact. So we're far better off just going 24-18. And this is what he's talking about. If the race is close, if we have a checker on the 24 point already, and we can play 1 to the 18 point, that's the right move. And it is in this situation. Look, it's a blunder to do anything else. So that's just a position, just to kind of. Mitchie sometimes in his own book talks about memorizing positions. That's just a rule to memorize. Here's another one to memorize. If the race is not close, if we're far behind in the race and we've lots of checkers back, or preferably an advanced anchor back already, then we should play 13-7. And the attraction of this, is a nice little way of phrasing it, is that if the race has become pretty hopeless and you're less interested in making the 18 point, the last time, the reason we played forward to the 18 point was we might be able to make an advanced anchor next go. But we're not interested in making anchors in our home board when we're so far behind. But playing 13-7, if we're hit, look, it hits our racing chances, but we're already screwed in the race. It doesn't make a difference. But if we're not hit, we might just make, his phrases I like this, it might enable you to build a little block which could prove annoying to the opposition. So in other words, let's look at this example. This time we're behind in the race. We've come in with the 1 as before. We could play it forward to the 18 point, but we don't need it. We've got an anchor already. And even if we put it back there, look what the checker's doing there on our 18 point. It's covering our opponents pretty much their entire home board. So they're looking to bring checkers into their inner board. And our checker at the back there is like the goalkeeper there, that's just at the back there. It's serving a really good purpose there. But if we obviously we're not going to bury 8-2. We know that's not going to be popular with XG. But if we play 13-7 now, Black's going to hit us with a 2, a 4, or a 3-1. So what's that? That's 21 rows. Black's going to hit us. If Black hits us, are we devastated? No, because we're already losing in the race. And that our white checker would go back and be another pain in the arse for them back up the top right there. So it's not a problem to be hit at all. But we leave up in the top right, we leave that checker on the 24 point just because it's so handy, just getting in the way. And if we'd rolled a 6-2 or a 6-3, we'd still leave that checker there because it's just suitably beautifully in the way for them. And that's an interesting look. The 8-2 isn't that disastrous a roll either, but it becomes moving off the bar point does become a mistake. The third of these positions is this, and I actually used this. We're playing in Wicklow Backgammon last night, and it worked perfectly. If you have a blot between the 20 point and the 22 point, Bill Roberti in the book says if you have a blot on the 20 point or the 21 point. But I've been playing with this in XG, and it always works in the 22 point as well. So rather than saying the 20 point or the 21 point, I'm going to say the 20 point or the 21 point or the 22 point. If you have a blot in that zone there, don't play another checker to the 18 point. Instead, move that checker to the outfield, or sometimes play 13-7 if you're very far behind. And again, this is probably the best way to show you as an example. So we've rolled a 6-3 here. We've got that blot now in that zone between the 20 point and the 22 point. And we've options to do. 13-7 isn't a disastrous move, although it does leave shots. It leaves several, it must be 23 or 24 hits for Black down the bottom there, if needs be. And if you look at, there's a lot of blots around the place there with the 13-7. So instead, we could play 11-5. And I mean, that's lots of point that we want to make. But again, Black will have 2s, 4s, or 3-1s. So that's 21 shots to hit us back. And given that the race is so close, being hit would be disastrous to our racing chances. So we just don't want to give Black the chance by giving that many shots to kind of kill us in the race. We're not doing 8-2. You know XG is not going to like 8-2. The correct move, this rule says, where we have a blot between the 20 and the 22 point, and where race is close, just run that forward. And again, going through it, anything else is a blunder in this situation. It's a handy rule to bear in mind. And I said, Roberti, just in his book, says, if you have a blot on the 20 point or the 21 point, move to the 7 point or the outfield rather than the 18 point. I find that once you've got a blot between the 20 and the 22 point, you're usually best running to the outfield. And finally, another process that just got mentioned in the Gammon Press article that I just think is interesting. If your back checkers are split, don't play 13-7. And that article, the Gammon Press article, he talks about a really useful little proverb or rule of thumb. It's not infallible, it says, but it says it'll point in the right direction most times, and it's this: don't slot when split. So if you've split your back checkers, don't try slotting your home board as well, because if you it's just extra blots strewn around. So if he misses you in one area, he'll be able to hit you in the other area, and your chances of, particularly if you slot your 5 point or your 7 point, and your opponent doesn't hit you in that area, they may be able to hit you elsewhere on the board where you've split at the back, and then have a second chance later on of hitting you in your home board. So as you split, you've already made blots. Having extra blots aren't going to help. So here's an example of this, where we've split at the back there. Now we've come in with the 4, so now our back checkers are split. Don't bring a checker down 13-7, because now you're just giving black an extra shot at you. And I said, if black doesn't hit you with a 6 down the bottom there, they may be able to hit you up the top and hit you with a 6 later on, because you've been so delayed. So put that back there and just run to the outfield is the best of the moves. And bar 15 is the right move. Now, in Bill Roberti's book, I'm trying to give you I said there's not a lot of notes out there, so I'm trying to give you as comprehensive a guide as I can. In Bill Roberti's book, he finishes off with a comparison of two very similar positions. I can't get my PowerPoint designer function to get those two boards even. Effectively, I'd love if those two boards that are shown there would be even in size, but I have to give one bigger than the other for some reason. If you look at it, two very, very similar positions. There's just on the left position, black has run one of their back checkers a little bit further forward. So on all the change is down the bottom left of the picture, really. In the one on the left hand side, black controls that area. The bottom right, we control that area as white, and we've just brought another checker, advanced a checker from our very back, and have a checker on our 11 point. And he just uses this as an example to show how to approach the positions. And he uses quite an interesting way of looking at things. He analyzes the two positions under 4 concepts: the race, what's going on in the race; the return hits, if we leave a block, chances of our opponent hitting us back; how easy will it be to consolidate if we don't get hit back; and then do we need to prepare for a longer game. So if we take the first of the positions here, in both positions we're going to come in with the 5 and we're going to hit, but it's just which blot do we hit. So here, let's take this one here. We come in with the 5. Now, if we take that checker we've come in with and run it forward 6 more, we can hit on the 14 point, like that. Or we can take our rearmost checker on the 24 point and hit like that. And the question is, which is better? And let's just go through it. In terms of the race, we are well ahead in the race. So we want to race. We don't need to kind of hit every single black checker on the way. We want to try and get our way around. In terms of return shots, playing from the bar to the 14 point, as is shown here, we've hit the checker on the top left there and left our white blot there instead on the top left. That leaves blacks can hit us back with 2, but otherwise we're pretty safe. If we're not hit in this situation, we should be able to take that blot up the top left there and bring it down into the midfield pretty safely. And we're now looking to try and run. So we're trying to create a racing situation there. So that's the correct move in that situation, just playing bar to 14. But this is the other situation here. So again, if you look at it, instead of us having a blot on our 11 point, it's right back up on our 22 point, right up in the top right there instead. And what's happened is black has advanced one of their rearmost checkers, and now has a blot in the bottom left there on our 9 point. So same thing, we come in with the 5. We're trying to decide, do we hit with that checker or with our rearmost checker? Well, if we hit with that checker, let's look at it again. The race is closer, so we would prefer to hit the more advanced black checker and send gain a few more pips race advantage. So that's less good. Black having that extra blot down the bottom there means they've way more chance of hitting us back if they do come off the bar, which they're likely to do because 35 and 36 rolls they're going to come off the bar. But now if they come back off with a 4 or with a 5 or a 2, they're hitting that checker. We're just that bit more vulnerable. And even if we don't get hit, there's less material around for us to consolidate there. And this looks like it's closer. It looks like it's a much more contact-based game. So we'd be better off prepared for a longer-term game if we had put that checker back and hit with this. Now in this situation here, if we'd hit 24-18 like this instead, now we're in a much better position to make an anchor. We've 3 checkers at the top there, and the 3 of them together, nicely connected, means we're more likely to make an anchor. We've done more damage to black in the race. We might get hit. One of those 3 checkers is likely to be hit, but black will, unless there are doublets, won't be able to cover it. So we should be able to come back and consolidate and make ourselves an anchor up the top and get ready, prepare for this. Is going to be a longer game because there's just more contact on both sides. So for that reason, in this position, it's the right move. Is to play 24-18 rather than bar to 14. No, look, it's only a minor mistake there, but in going for accuracy, let's do it. Finally, 2 test yourself positions, and I would say, just to go over it again, the first thing I want you to do is just take your time, consider all the different options. I'm using this. This was the first of these test yourself positions was the Gammon Press article, was the one position they gave in the Gammon Press article. And have a look at this and how would you play 6-2 here? And assuming that you've paused and now unpaused, well, the 2, you come in. You've done that straight away. And now the question is, well, how do you play the 6? Race is very even. We have a slightly stronger home board. You could play 8-2, but I think by now you'll realize that that's a mistake. It would really wreck us in the race if black were to roll a 1 now. So we're instantly, I think we can discard that. And we're unlikely. We could roll a 4 next go, but we're unlikely to. We're making a very deep point, even if we make a deep point. So let's discard that. We could play 13-7. It's definitely better for sure. But look at the blots on the top. We've split it on the top right. Remember that expression of don't slot when you're split? We're still vulnerable to a hit, and we'd be straight away. We'd be a big loss in the race. We'd just giving black a free shot at us if we do that. And don't slot when you're split. Let's just keep remembering that. So let's put that back. Now we could. I suppose there's only 2 other options. We can play 22-16. Come forward like that. We have to leave blots. There's no. I said the reason I call these awkward 6s is that we have an awkward situation where we're not. There's nothing safe about this. We can play that 22-16, which is not bad, or we could play 21-15, the more advanced checker, and move that forward there. Those 2 last plays aren't bad, and it's a question of which one is slightly better. Well, if you look at it, this one black hits us. Let's count what black hits us with. Hits us with down there. Our furthermost advanced blot is hit with a 4 or a 5. Checkers in our zone are hit with 2s and 4s and 6s potentially. So we're a little bit vulnerable there. If we were to come forward with the 21-15 instead, we're hit with up the top. We're hit with a 4 or a 3. In our home board, we're hit with a 4 or a 3, possibly a loose shot with a 5. So there's a little bit more duplication with this way. So for this reason, if you chose 21-15 to play the 6, that's the correct move. No, I said not a disaster if you chose 21-16, but we don't play the ones down from the midfield or 8-2 because it's just we're just giving black a free shot to just kind of completely kill us in the race. And finally, Then I said there were going to be two test yourself positions. I said I was playing in Wicklow Backgammon Club last night, and I kind of straight away went into an awkward six position. I gave you the position at the start, so let's just look at it again. Having gone through this video, let's just look at that again. How did I play this was the 6-4 I got last night. What to do? Well, I have to come in with the 4. How do I play the 6? If you want to pause and then unpause, looking at the options, 8-2, stupid move. If we get a loss with a 1, we're hit. We don't want to do that. 13-7, don't slot when split. If you look at it, black has so many shots to hit us there back with 3s, 4s, 6s. They hit that, and if they miss with 3s, 4s, 6s, 2s and various other numbers are going to let them 5s and things will let us hit us in their home board up the top right instead. So for that reason, that's clearly not going to be the right move. And I just looked at that last night. I'm delighted to say I kind of followed the right move, and I followed that rule about if we what's that rule that says if you have a blot on the 20 point to the 22 point, you can move to the outfield or move 13-7. We know 13-7 is wrong, so we're going to move one of those blots to the outfield. And I looked at it and I kind of thought I could play 24-18, but that achieves, well, I suppose it slots the point. We might be able to make an advanced anchor, but it's not particularly attractive. Instead, I looked at the 2, followed that rule about we've got blots in the 20 and 21 point. One of them surely needs to move to the outfield. I looked at that one first as an option, and I looked at this one as the other option, playing the, again, do I play from the 22 point to 21 point? I thought about it, and I'm delighted to say I went for the correct move, which was the 22-16, because I'm sorry, I've gone through my slides too quickly, but in doing that, it duplicated 4s, which it was very neat that I was leaving myself in a position where really I was just leaving black 4s to hit us. So, long video, lot of material there. I'm sorry, I have thought about how I can't make it any conciser. So I've just listed here, in case you want to take a screenshot, the process I've talked about. So you, first of all, go through, don't be afraid to take time and go through all the different plays just to double check. Second thing, see is there a safe play. Don't bury your checker too deep. It's usually going to be a mistake to go 8-2. If you can hit. If you can't hit but make a good point, do. Try to minimize shots and blots. Don't worry too much about connectedness. Although, you know, if you've got a choice, flip between two moves, well, bear that in mind. And just double check that a tempo hit is, it could be something that's very helpful. I said you don't want to play 8-2, but if you can hit with 8-2, very often it's a handy tempo shot. And then the 4 specific positions I mentioned. One is close race. We want to try and build ourselves an anchor. We don't want to kind of get hit down the bottom of the board and give a huge racing loss, take a huge racing loss. So instead we play a checker to the 18 point. If it's not a close race and we're far behind, and we've many checkers back, or if we have an advanced anchor already, play 13-7. As Bill Roberti says, you could make a little blockade that's a bit of annoying to your opponent. If you have lots between the 20 point and the 22 point, Bill Roberti does say you can play the checkers 13-7, but sometimes I find that doesn't really work. It's fine to just move one of those checkers in the outfield. And finally, if you split your back checkers, don't slot with the 13-7. Don't split and slot is the rules that come to mind. So there's a lot there. I've found this kind of a lot to take in, and you know, every time I get a position, I'm trying to think of, God, which rule do I use now? There's so much parts of this process to use. Just things to think about. I'm going to wait to try and implement these 4 particular specific positions in mind. In particular, I wanted to try and implement them. Maybe I'm just thick and everyone else finds it easier, but I do find 6s from the bar, and sometimes not even from the bar. Just sometimes a 6 can be a pain in the arse, and I do very often consider all the rows and then pick the completely wrong one. And so I just need to get better at this, and that's why I just wanted to list out the rules and take them there. You'll be relieved to hear that we move on to two very quick short proverbs, and very quick videos will be coming next week. Um, of the latest of the proverbs, kind of the final few proverbs in Mitchie's book. And we get back to Mitchie. For now, that was my research. Everything that is out there at the moment in the internet about how to play an awkward six.